what if the wisdom you seek does not come from rising toward the heavens, but from descending into the place you feared most? And what if your deepest fear has always been your invitation? Welcome, seeker of forgotten rites, to the Enchanted Archive, where the descent is not a failure, but a return to what the soul already knows. You've felt it, haven't you? The pull downward, quiet, sacred, and strange. This is the story of Katabasis, the sacred descent you must take before you awaken. But make no mistake, this is not just a myth. This is a pattern, a spiritual law, hidden across centuries, scriptures, and scars. And once you start seeing it, you'll see it everywhere, behind closed eyes, between ancient pages, and in the hush before change arrives. Katabasis, from the ancient Greek word meaning to go down, has echoed through the ages as more than mere journey. It is a rite, a passage, a confrontation. Oh, a dying of oneself, so another may rise. You felt this too, in breakups, in diagnoses, in nights you couldn't name why you were crying. And though the word is Greek, its spirit is universal. You'll see it in the old stories, where heroes kneel before shadows and return with flame in their hands. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus does not find the way home until he first travels to the land of the dead. He kneels at the edge of Hades, where shadows whisper and ancestors speak truths not heard in daylight. And perhaps you know this place too, where the air thickens and the silence feels ancient, a threshold you didn't choose but couldn't ignore. Only then, after tasting death's silence, can he sail forward again. Maybe you've been there too, facing a truth you didn't ask for, but could no longer outrun. But he is not alone. Orpheus too descends, not for knowledge, but for love. He sings his way into the underworld, his music taming the guardians of death. Yet even in beauty, the rules remain. He looks back, and she is gone. How often have you looked back, hoping love would follow, only to find silence instead? And some descend not for love, but to prove they cannot be broken. Then comes Heracles, who tears the gates of Hades open. With strength alone, he does not ask permission. He subdues the beast. He returns triumphant. Different motives, same path, downward, because in the ancient mind, true power was proven not by conquering kingdoms, but by touching death and coming back changed. And not all journeys were heroic. Persephone, the goddess dragged into shadow, returns each year with the spring. Her descent explains the cold, her return, the bloom. She dies, and so the world is reborn, because some part of you must die too, so something truer can return. This is not metaphor. It is memory. It is the cycle we live. You see it in Dionysus, who enters the realm of the dead to retrieve his mother, a god born again through grief. And long before Greece carved these tales into stone, Sumerians told of Inanna, queen of heaven, who descended through 7 gates, each stripping her of power pride and pretense. She enters naked. She dies. And through magic, she rises again, not as she was, but more whole. Have you ever felt stripped of everything, only to find what was real beneath it all? Inanna's descent is not a punishment. It is a metamorphosis. And so is yours. Across Egypt, the sun god Ra sails nightly into Duat, the shadow realm, where he wrestles with Apophis, the serpent of chaos. Every morning, he emerges victorious. Every morning, the world begins again, and somewhere in the darkness, you recognize this story, because even in the quiet corners of your own life, in depression, loss, grief, or fear, you have walked the same path, and deep down, you knew it wasn't the end, just a beginning, dressed in silence. You have descended, and if you're still here, you have risen. But do you remember what you found in the dark? In Mesopotamia, Gilgamesh crosses the waters of death to speak to the immortal Utnapishtim, not for glory, not for gold, but for understanding, to learn why we die, and what remains is reward, not immortality, but perspective. He does not escape death. He learns how to live. This is the soul of Katabasis. You descend not to escape death, but to learn how to live. Even the sun must go dark before it returns to the sky. There is no light that hasn't walked through its own shadow. The Maya told of twins who descended into Xibalba, the place of fear. They played with death, tricked the lords of the underworld, and re-emerged, heroes of light, reborn through trial. In Egypt, Osiris never leaves the underworld. It is his son, Horus, who rises in his name. The father rests in Duat, not as a prisoner, but as the ruler of what lies beneath. And still, the cycle turns. Every culture, every myth, every soul speaks the same truth. To awaken, you must go down. You must let go of who you think you are. You must meet the part of yourself you've buried. Katabasis is not a metaphor. It is a map, a sacred sequence, etched into myth, ritual, and memory. And as we descend together, you may begin to realize the journey was never about the underworld. It was about what you carry into it and what you choose to bring back. If this descent speaks to something inside you, don't turn away. This is only the first gate. Subscribe to walk further into the depths and perhaps toward your own rebirth. Not all descents happen in myth. Some were lived, practiced, passed down through sacred rites, hidden behind veils and silence. You see, the ancients didn't just tell the story of Katabasis. They enacted it in Eleusis, beneath the moon, and among the grain. They honored Persephone's fall, not as tragedy, but as truth. The Eleusinian mysteries were not sermons. They were thresholds. Participants, called initiates, would enter blind, led through darkness, their names stripped, their identities dissolved. What they saw remained secret even now, but what they became was something more than they were. In the dark of the Telesterion, they died symbolically and came out with eyes reborn, This was not a performance. It was preparation to die before you die, to rehearse the journey so that when the final breath comes, your soul remembers the path they understood. If you wait until death to seek wisdom, it may already be too late. So they descended willingly. They tasted the dark. They stepped into forgetting in order to remember, and they were not alone. The Orphics carried a similar fire, born of the myth of Orpheus. Their rites whispered of a soul's return through memory to the uninitiated dead. There is Lethe, the river of forgetting. Drink it, and you are reborn, empty. But the Orphics taught their followers to seek Mnemosyne, the spring of remembrance. For those who remembered, rebirth was not regression, but evolution. You did not start over. You continued. You carried the light forward. That is the gift of descent, not escape from life, but a deepening of it. Even philosophy, the search for truth without incense or altar, knew this law. When Plato wrote, "I went down to the Piraeus yesterday," he meant more than geography. He meant initiation, because in the Republic, Socrates begins in the underworld of ideas, beneath the city, among the crowds, where truth is hidden in noise. And from there, he climbs toward justice, toward the good, toward the sun. But every ascent requires first a descent. Even Plato's allegory of the cave reminds us truth is not found in light alone, but in the courage to face the shadows first. And what of the one who returns? What of the philosopher who dares to send again, not for themselves, but for those still chained? This too is Katabasis, not for survival, but for service, to bring light back into darkness. Neoplatonists would expand the vision. Plotinus spoke of the soul as descending into matter, a voluntary fall, a sacred fragmentation, meant to be recollected and rejoined to the one. To go down is to remember why we seek the way up. Porphyry, Iamblichus, and the mystics of Alexandria read the myths not as fables, but as codes. Each gate, each monster, each shadow was a map of the soul stations. Even in Plato's Symposium, I love dialogue. Some hear the echo of Katabasis, where Socrates, surrounded by those entranced by physical love, leads them downward into their own illusions before revealing the higher form of beauty. It is not always a descent through caves. Sometimes the underworld wears perfume. Sometimes it sings. And still, is darkness just the same? Because Katabasis is not defined by fire or tombs or stone. It is defined by disillusionment, the shattering of what you thought was true, the fall from what you thought was you. The soul must pass through its own death to see itself clearly. Wow, that is why in mystery traditions, the descent is sacred. It is not punishment. It is passage. It is not exile. It is invitation. The old self must break apart to reveal what was buried beneath it and buried in the myths, in the rituals, In the rites and prayers and ancient songs is this same seed of truth. The only way out is through, not over, not around, not above, through the dark, through the forgetting, through the silence that humbles and hollows you. This is the wisdom of the mysteries. This is the descent that purifies. This is the sacred forgetting that precedes the sacred remembering. And as philosophers, poets, and prophets discovered, you do not escape the underworld by force. You rise from it by surrender. And that surrender is the secret of transformation. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what part of you still resists the descent? Because in that resistance is your invitation. There is a silence deeper than death. Place the soul enters, not to escape the world, but to redeem it. And so even gods must descend. In early Christianity, this descent was not metaphor. It was doctrine. Christ descended into hell. This was not poetry. It was the Apostles' Creed. After the crucifixion, before the resurrection, Jesus passed through death's domain, not as a victim, but as a liberator. This moment is known as the harrowing of hell. The Son of God enters the underworld, not to suffer, but to shatter its gates. In apocryphal texts, Christ breaks the chains of Adam, raises Eve from her sorrow, and calls forth the righteous from darkness into light. It is the ultimate Katabasis, a descent that frees not only the self, but the collective soul of humanity. And this teaches us something vital, that even divinity must kneel before it can rise, that the light must enter the pito to prove it is real. No one reaches resurrection, the mystics whispered, without first lying in the tomb. And the tomb is not just of stone. It is of despair, doubt, disillusionment, surrender. It is the moment when what you believe dies, so what you are can be born. Dante understood this. When he opened his Divine Comedy, he did not begin in paradise. He began lost. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark. He writes, he has strayed from the true path. He is surrounded by trees, not symbols of life, but confusion. And then comes a guide. Virgil, poet of the past, voice of Rome. Together they begin the descent through the 9 circles of hell, not for punishment, for understanding. Each soul they meet in Inferno reveals a truth about human nature, about justice, about the shadow that clings even to the virtuous. Dante does not walk through fire. He walks through truth. He sees the liar, the traitor, the lustful, the wrathful, not as strangers, but as mirrors. Hell is not far away. It is beneath the surface of us all, and only by facing it, only by moving through it, can he begin to ascend. At the end of Inferno, he emerges from the underworld to see again the stars, not because he conquered hell, but because he listened, because he looked, because he descended with open eyes. And this is not Dante's vision alone. In medieval Christianity, Katabasis echoes in visions of saints and mystics. In the Apocalypse of St. Paul, the apostle is shown the horrors of hell, not for shock, but for guidance. He returns with warnings, with revelations, with urgency. Even Sir Orfeo, a Celtic-tinged retelling of Orpheus, sends a knight into a fairy underworld to retrieve his love. Here, the otherworld is a blend of myth and magic, Christian and pagan, but still the pattern remains: descent, trial, return. It is the same pattern we see in the hero's journey described by Joseph Campbell. Call to adventure, crossing the threshold, entering the belly of the beast, whether it's Jonah in the whale, or Christ in the tomb, or Dante in the circles of the damned. The abyss is not the end. It is the middle, the sacred womb, where the false self dies, the crucible from which clarity is born. But not every descent ends in triumph. In Orpheus' tale, the failure to trust undoes everything. In tales of hubris, like Perithous or Theseus invading Hades for pride, the descent becomes a prison. There is a rule, ancient and sacred. You may enter the underworld only if you are willing to change, not to conquer, not to boast, but to transform. And transformation is not a gift. It is a wound. You do not return whole. You return remade. And so the medieval imagination did not romanticize the descent. It revered it, because to descend meant to be stripped of illusions, of power, of everything that wants to find you. In the darkness of the cave, there is no throne, only silence. In the fires of hell, there is no audience, only you and the choices you made. And perhaps this is the mercy of Katabasis. It reveals what we truly worship. It shows us what we carry when all else burns away. And from there, it asks the most terrifying question: do you still want to rise? Close your eyes. Imagine walking through a corridor lined with your past selves. The you that betrayed, the you that broke, the you that gave up. Would you keep walking if that was the only way forward? Not all descents happen in the flesh. Some take place in silence, in sleepless nights, in the ache behind your ribcage, in that moment when everything you once believed crumbles. This is the Katabasis of the soul, a journey not to Hades, but to the hidden chambers of your own psyche. And no one mapped this path more vividly than Carl Jung. To Jung, myth was not myth. It was memory, ancestral memory, psychic code, symbols through which the unconscious spoke. He called the descent into the unconscious Anekia, a night-sea journey of the soul, just like Odysseus entered the land of the dead to speak with those had lost. Jung believed we must enter the underworld within, to face the parts of ourselves we've buried: fear, blind, shame, desire, the unspoken, the unloved, the unintegrated. He named it the shadow, and he warned, You do not become whole by chasing light. You awaken by turning toward the dark. One does not become enlightened, he wrote, by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, known. Now, this is the essence of modern Katabasis, to face what frightens you inside, not to banish it, but to embrace it as part of you. Jung himself lived this descent between 1913 and 1917. He stepped away from public life and entered a profound personal crisis, one he documented in his Red Book. He recorded visions, dialogues with inner figures, journeys through underworlds not of myth, but of mind. He saw himself walking among the dead, speaking with prophets, encountering the divine feminine and the demonic masculine. Symbols collided, ego shattered, and slowly he re-emerged, not cured, but transformed. He had made the descent, and he had brought back a language for others to follow. Later depth psychologists, like James Hillman, built on this path. Hillman said, "You cannot rise until you've gone all the way down. No, nae, you never arami." He rejected the modern obsession with rising above our wounds. Instead, he asked us to descend into them. Grief, depression, fear, and not as flaws to fix, but as places of soul-making, to feel them fully, to walk through them, as through a dark forest, where meaning waits in the roots. This is the dark night of the soul, a term born of Christian mysticism, but alive now in psychology, in healing, in spiritual crisis. It is the hollowing out, before the filling, the storm, before the stillness. St. John of the Cross, who coined the term in the 16th century, wrote of this night, not as punishment, but as purification. The soul, he said, must be emptied so that divine light can enter without distortion. Modern thinkers echo him. Spiritual emergencies, breakdowns, loss of meaning. These aren't endings, they're thresholds. Katabasis is not the collapse. It is what begins after the collapse. And you see this in the stories we tell. In modern literature, the descent appears not with torches and tombs, but with funerals, cemeteries, hallucinations, and hospital rooms. In James Joyce, Ulysses, Leopold Bloom wanders a graveyard, a living man among the dead, haunted by memories, seeking something. His underworld is not Hades. It is Dublin. It is guilt. It is a brothel where ghosts wear flesh and truth whispers in delirium. In T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, the world is dry, but beneath it, a chapel lies broken. Voices echo, warnings stir. The descent is cultural, civilizational. The underworld is everywhere, because the world, too, can forget its soul. And through all these stories, in literature, in dreams, in therapy, in memory, the pattern persists. Descent, confrontation, integration, return. Not all make it back. Orpheus failed. Many do. Some cling to the dark. Others pretend it never happened. But those who remember, who honor what they found there, they rise different, not perfect, but whole. Jung called this individuation the process of becoming your full, authentic self, by integrating the opposites within, shadow and light, reason and instinct, death and rebirth. To descend is to face what you were never taught to love in yourself, and in doing so, you reclaim your story, no longer ruled by your wounds, no longer afraid of your own reflection. Take a breath. Now ask, what are you still refusing to feel? That is the door. That is your underworld. And that is where the real work begins. Even now, in this so-called modern age of science, speed, and silicon, the descent still calls. You may not call it Katabasis. You may not speak of Hades, or hell, or Sibalba, but the moment arrives just the same. That moment when the world goes quiet, not outside, but inside, when everything you thought mattered doesn't, when the scaffolding of identity collapses in a breath, in a phone call, in a diagnosis, in a goodbye, and you find yourself falling. This is the new underworld, and still the old maps work, because the descent was never about geography. It was always about surrender. Modern myths remember this. Joseph Campbell called it the hero's journey, and at its heart lies a single, crucial turn, the belly of the whale, the abyss, the lowest point, the underworld. He wrote, the hero ventures into the unknown, endures trials, and descends into darkness, only to emerge transformed. No, and this descent is not a detour. It is the core. You see it in every story that matters. In Harry Potter, walking into the forest, knowing he might die. In Frodo, standing at the crack of doom, holding the ring that nearly consumes him. In Moana, diving into the realm of monsters to retrieve the heart of the world. In Luke Skywalker, entering the cave on Dagobah, only to confront himself. In all these tales, the truth is the same. You must go in, and you must go alone, because the treasure you seek does not lie in the light. It waits in the dark. And what is that treasure? It is not gold, not praise, not peace. It is self, the you. That is not performance. The you that cannot be taken away. The you that remembers why it came here in the first place. Psychologists call it healing. Mystics call it awakening. Mythologists call it return. But it is always the same moment. The moment when you climb out of the dark and say, I know who I am now, because I faced who I was not. And the best stories don't end with escape. They end with return. The hero comes home, wounded, wiser, carrying the fire they found in the shadows. Because Katabasis is not a one-time path. It's a cycle. Down and back, bog, again and again, each time deeper, each time clearer. And you are on that path too. You've been there already. You've lost. You've fallen. You've wandered the night, wondering if morning would ever come. And yet, you're still here. That is proof. You are not alone in the underworld. Others have walked it. Others are walking it now. And each of them, each of us, carries a lantern. What you carry back from your descent is not just for you. It becomes a guide for someone else. A poem, a story, a hand on someone's shoulder in the dark. This is how we remember. This is how the archive survives. Every descent, written in starlight and shadow. Every awakening, echoed in song. Every silence, answered by a whisper. Keep going. The path curves upward. Not yet, but soon. And when it does, when the light breaks through the soil, it is not as it was. You are not who you were. You are the one who descended. You are the one who returned. And that makes all the difference. Take a final breath. Now ask yourself, what truth did you leave behind in your last descent? And what would happen if you dared to go back and retrieve it? If this journey stirred something inside you, a memory, a fear, a flicker of light, subscribe to the Enchanted Archive. Here, we walk forgotten paths, through myth, shadow, and silence, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it whole. Let us know in the comments, what has been your descent, and what did it awaken in you? Because somewhere, someone is still falling, and your story might be the rope that helps them rise.